Welcome back, everyone. This is Austin Revel right here at 2F by C Tactical in New Prague, Minnesota, and we're going to talk about something going on in Virginia. But before we get into it, if you don't mind commenting, and subscribing, we're super excited to bring you this kind of stuff, and that helps the channel grow. If you do want to support us, we do have a Patreon. Again, it's not necessary. I understand that this stuff will always be free to you guys. But if you would like to support us, since YouTube doesn't like always monetize or anything like that, it would help us out tremendously. That will be my only sales pitch, but I do hope you will also take time to go check out our news section on our website. We can't link it down here, again, because of the YouTube rules, but we do try to put out articles all the time of what's going on in the gun world. And with SHOT Show coming up, there will be a bunch of content that we'll be posting here on YouTube, as well as writing about as we see the new and exciting things in our gun community. Now, when it comes to today's video, I'm actually going to give a shout out to a friend of mine, Chris Eager, one of the writers for Guns Dots. You can't say the last part, but it's a domain named out there that's pretty big and pretty well known, who just got done writing an article on this Virginia bill to increase the suppressor tax. Now, with that being said, just kind of give you some backstory here about what's going on. So first off, the way that the governorship works in Virginia, you can only have one term at a time. You can't serve consecutive terms as the governor. So with that being said, someone new runs every cycle. And this year, or this past cycle, it was a Republican, Glenn Youngkin, won, and it kind of righted the ship a lot, and is still very popular in the state of Virginia over there. And unfortunately, the this time there's going to be a flip to someone who is very anti-gun, Abigail Springer, I believe is how you say her last name, backed by Everytown and Moms Demand Action, and starting off her governorship here soon. There's a slew of anti-gun bills that are up for the legislator there to debate, and with a trifecta in that state, it could be very bad for gun owners over there. And with that being said, the biggest one that is a concern nationwide, especially in gun control heavy states like Minnesota, California, New York, and all, is one bill that deals with suppressors. Now, we're in the year 2026. Back in the summer of 2025, during the Big Beautiful Bill passage in Congress, one of the things in there was the removal of the $200 tax stamp as it relates to suppressors, short barrel rifles, short barrel shotguns, and any other weapons. That doesn't mean that the fingerprinting and the burdensome regulations go away. It just means no $200 tax to the feds. And because of that, we're seeing a massive spike in suppressor sales and suppressor submissions. Again, Chris Eager, go check him out. Just did a thing on the fact that Form 4s reached 150,000 submissions in one day. Form 1s, which is home built suppressors, is up to like 64,000, numbers that we have never seen before, showing you that there's a whole bunch of people out there that always wanted to exercise these constitutional rights but couldn't because of governmental anti-constitutional policies. If we're just being straight up, that's what these are. And hopefully some of these lawsuits from Gun Owners of America and FPC and Second Amendment Foundation and AGR, and I'm sure I'm missing a slew of them, that are trying to remove these items completely from the National Firearms Act based on the Szynski case of, I believe it was 1937. Definitely support these guys. This is a big fight, and we need to win it. And this kind of bill is why, because the state is trying to exercise its taxing power on a right. And as of right now, the way the Szynski case went in I think it was 1937. Don't quote me on that. I'll put the actual date down there. The Supreme Court allowed the National Firearms Act to stay into place because it's saying it was Congress just exercising its taxation powers, and didn't violate the Second Amendment because it was exercising taxation powers and wasn't actually banning anything. Now, with that being said, that would put the machine guns in a interesting category because those were banned in 1986. Different video for a different day, but with that tax going down to zero, there's basically no constitutional argument for the registration aspect, because now it is a pure gun registry, which is something that that the Supreme Court said it actually wasn't because taxes were being collected. And so what Virginia is trying to do is use that same rubric and argument by slapping $500 on to the sale of suppressors inside Virginia. Now, when it comes to us here at 2F by C Tactical and myself personally, the Bill of Rights, the federal constitution, is spoken to just that, the federal government. Anything not mentioned in that would be state purview. Everything mentioned in it is federal purview. So let's just take what's going on in Minnesota just briefly. And I did a whole video on the ICE situation, so we're not going to dive into it. I'll have a link down below if you would like to listen to that one. But when we're talking about the immigration enforcement going on in Minnesota today, there is a lawsuit by this state, specifically Minneapolis and St. Paul, saying that the federal government is invading the Minnesota, and it's illegal. They can't do it. They cannot send their officers here, and that's just simply not true, because under federal powers, specifically the Article 1 executive branch, they are in charge of immigration reform. That is their purview. They get to do that. Just the same reason why when it comes to imports and exports or taxation or anything, these are all spoken to the federal government. Now, the Bill of Rights section, the 14th Amendment mandates those on the states. The states have to recognize those. So with that being laid out, I personally don't believe in state gun laws. I don't believe in gun laws at all. But if there was to be a gun law, it has to be federal, because that is federal purview. It is not states' purview. The states do not get to speak in this. I'm aware that's not how it's being enforced. It's not how it's being done. I'm just saying that that's where we stand here. So this is going to bring up a very interesting fight if this bill does pass over suppressor taxes at the state level. And that's where the big danger always was. Once you start playing with the taxes and not eliminating these items from the National Firearms Act with the Hearing Protection Act and the Short Act, which is what should have been in that big beautiful bill, and cowards didn't push it through. I mean, there's no other way to describe it. Then you're left with this loophole that theoretically could be played with. So that $0 tax could be $10,000 overnight. And we are seeing on the federal side certain senators and House members propose bills to do just that, to fund Medicaid, they say. Despite the fact that they raise it as high as they're going to do it, nobody's going to use it, so there's going to be no money to tax because no one's going to buy it. But that's beside the point. The point is to use power of taxation to eliminate items from society. That is what they're trying to do. They're trying to get around the protections of the Second Amendment, saying that we're allowing the sale. Right? This is the argument that FDR's administration took in 1934. You're seeing this now at the state level. It's just, we're not saying you can't buy a suppressor. We're just saying you have to pay us for permission to do it. That's all. You have to pay a sales tax, just like anything else. Now, in my humble opinion, this violates the other Supreme Court case in the Star Tribune in 1983 or 1984, where there was a tax on pen and ink and paper that was put right here in Minnesota, and the Star Tribune successfully sued. It's like, you can't do that because that's violating our First Amendment rights, and it was, and I stand by that. That was wrong and should not be pursued. Anything that infringes upon the right or makes extra steps or extra cost on the right is equivalent of like a poll tax, which again is unconstitutional. You cannot tax people for exercising rights. That is what is trying to be done here. What are the odds that this will pass? We have seen in the past, though, I will say this about Virginia. We have seen the Virginia people step up and go out and let their voices be heard in the past, and things didn't pass, despite the fact certain parties had full control of the state. I will say that was, back 2015, 2016, so on and so forth. Times are different. Parties, unfortunately, are different and increasingly more radical and more firm on what they want to do, and everyone else kind of be damned. So there's no guarantees there that would work again, but you should absolutely, if you're in Virginia, let your voices be heard. And I do think we should need to look at this, like here in Minnesota, as a warning shot. This is a warning shot across the bow that this is if this is successful, it for sure is going to be, is going to be implemented, or at least attempted to be implemented across the United States and various states. And I do. It's really going to come down to what is the Supreme Court ruling on these items and these lawsuits, because in theory, if they don't say that this violates Second Amendment grounds, if they do it on the Administrative Procedures Act or whatever else that that they've done in the past, which we've seen with like FRTs and bump stocks and all that kind of stuff and pistol braces, they just remove it on these procedural grounds versus making it a Second Amendment case that allows states to put in extra regulations, and it technically stands scrutiny because this federal Supreme Court didn't say that it's unconstitutional. So that's really where this battle is going to play out, and we're going to see this battle play out in various states. I mean, that's my prediction. I would not be shocked if California does not pursue it. And some of this is going to be dependent on a case out of Illinois. I don't remember the plaintiff at the top of my head, but Illinois has a complete NFA ban on suppressors and everything. You can't have them in Illinois. And there is a case that I believe might be up for Supreme Court review at this point, saying that that's unconstitutional. You can't outright ban a category of arms. And depending on how that shakes out too, could see how a bill like this would move forward. All these things are connected. It's all about chipping away at our rights one chip at a time, and then us trying to restore them one chip at a time. It's going to be a constant battle. It will never end. Like if we were to win every single court case of all the cases in front of us and shoot down every single gun control bill, there will be another attempt with different language, with a different path. We're always going to have to be on guard, and we're always going to have to be aggressive in restoring our rights. We can never take our foot off the gas, because the moment we take the foot off the gas, the other side, the people who want to remove our rights will take more ground. And that's the thing. We became too trusting at one point, and now we're fighting a whole bunch of battles, and it's very hard. And Anton Scalia said this probably a decade ago at this point, maybe more, where he said that you want laws to be hard to pass and even harder to remove, because the idea of the founders was it's hard to pass, therefore it must be broadly popular. But since it's harder to remove, you are supposed to take time and think, is this what we actually want? We all know that Congress and all doesn't work that way anymore. They ram through things under reconciliation or whatever that they want, and it's a whole crap sandwich with some good things in there, most of the time mostly bad, and then we're stuck with this stuff forever. That's what it seems like. And I do see that there is a massive change among gun owners that we're just fed up with that. We want our rights restored. We're tired of people saying, well, if you just give us this, it's always if you just give us this. It's never what will you give us. It's always what will we give you. It's not a true negotiation if we're always surrendering, because you're never giving us anything. So that's where I do fall on this particular issue. I think we should all watch it. Again, shout out to Chris Eager for writing about this. Did a great job. And I do think that people need to pay attention of what's going to happen in Virginia, because that's going to be indicative of some states like Minnesota. There is a lot of similarities when you look at a state like Minnesota in terms of electorate. It is a blue state in terms of how we vote statewide because of Minneapolis-St. Paul, in terms of our governorship, our senators, and presidencies. It's famous for not voting for a Republican president since I think since Nixon, or maybe even before that. And Virginia has some similarities there in terms of how their population is made up, rural counties versus populous counties, and in terms of total population. Again, there's a lot of crossover where you can look at this and kind of draw some predictions for the future. And then when it comes from Minnesota, and I'm going to speak to our Minnesota audience here, when it comes to our governor currently, and again, this is not a political channel. This is just what can we do to advance our rights. We do need to be on guard. He has decided not to run again, which means he has nothing left to lose. He is going to go. He's made every indication that he's not resigning. And even if he does, the person behind him is even more anti-gun than he is. And again, that's hard to do. That's saying something. You're going to see him push hard on this stuff. We do have assault weapon bans, magazine bans. We have increased red flag laws, safe storage, a whole bunch of things that have already been introduced that they're going to try to ram through. And we have a 50-50 split in the House and a one seat majority for the DFL, which is right now is the anti-gun side in the Senate. And of course, the governorship is Governor Tim Walz, and nothing else needs to be said about that, where he stands. So we need to be very much on guard because there's no guarantees. There's no guarantees that there won't be a collapse or someone won't flip. Unfortunately, politicians are always looking to hold on to their seats of power, and they're not about doing the right thing. And if you lose, you lose, but you did the right thing. That's not how this works. It's all about how long can I keep my seat. So we just need to be very on guard. And again, we are always downhill from policies like this here in Minnesota. It doesn't take long for you to see these kind of policies in other states trickle their way into our body politic here. So this is a test case. So make no bones about it. This is a test case to see if A, this can pass, B, what will the court say, and in the meantime, Virginia residents are going to get screwed, right? That's the idea, and we're going to have to watch it very closely. Now, with that being said, I hope you, again, also subscribe to our news channel. You can go to our main page and subscribe to let you know when new articles are coming out. They're coming out almost daily at this point. There's so much news here in the new year. I mean, we're only 2 weeks into the new year, and oh my goodness, so many things are changing. It's like drinking out of a fire hose. So please check out our Patriots Almanac news section about what's going on. Yes, right here at 2FYC Tactical, but also in the gun world. And again, we're going to have a lot of updates from SHOT Show. Super excited to share what we see and some of the exciting things going on in the gun industry. With that, we look forward to seeing you next time.